Hi everyone, this is Elizabeth from Strange Go, and in this video we are going to explore some disturbing stories about embalming. Embalming in the early half of the 20th century was not an exact science, and just about everyone was giving the process a shot. Whether it was a bored farmer who liked to tinker with the dead bodies from the insane asylum, or a living person who found himself on the embalmer's slab, the history of embalming is a rather disturbing adventure. Have you ever had that dream where you are lying on a table about to be embalmed and you're trying your damnedest to let the embalmer know that you're still alive, but you can't move? If so, you might want to stop this video and turn your attention to happier thoughts, because this was a rather common occurrence back in the early 1900s. For instance, Joseph Axline, a mere 21 years old, was pronounced dead by his doctor. However, just as the embalmer was about to stick him with a needle, the young man woke up. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, embalmers could be called to embalm the dead in people's homes. For example, in 1898, Mr. Edgar Whippy was called to the home of a reverend in Arizona to embalm the reverend's 6-week-old child. No investigation was made into the child's death. There were embalmers for white people and a growing number of women embalmers for girls and women. There were also embalmers specifically for people of color. In Nashville, Tennessee, business was booming for black embalmers during the early 1900s. Their waiting rooms and services were just as fancy as those of the white folks. The only real problem for embalmers during that time was in getting the bodies into their parlors before the bodies started to decay. In an article from 1907, an embalmer begged the community to get the bodies to him in time. There is a deadline, he explained, where a body could no longer be preserved. This was especially true when the body was blackened from decay. From the mid-1800s to 1910, arsenic was used to embalm the dead. This became a problem when medical doctors tried to determine if someone was murdered by arsenic poison, because the dead were often embalmed immediately after death. Today, arsenic poison is leaching out from the coffins of Civil War soldiers who were embalmed with arsenic. Those who died in the insane asylums were sometimes used to test out experimental embalming fluids. For example, in 1882, it was reported that the body of Mr. Berger, a man who died in an insane asylum, was embalmed with a special embalming solution and then kept unburied for 2 years to see how well the embalming fluid worked. If it wasn't bad enough that people experimented with embalming dead patients, one man, a farmer with no formal education, was given a special room inside of an insane asylum where he was allowed to embalm dead patients and house them to check the rate of their decay. This greatly upset the inmates. Finally, early embalmers were similar to ambulance chasers of today. Wherever a disaster and mass casualties were reported, embalmers would flood the area with offers to embalm the deceased immediately on the spot. If you enjoyed this video, please take a moment to give it a like, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe button so that you can keep up to date with the latest videos from Strange Go.